This part, the fifth one, is the whole you pyramid. This is like my baby. If I do a TED talk, it would be the whole you pyramid, okay? The final strategy is what I call the whole you pyramid, bringing together your past wisdom, your present awareness, and your future vision. Today, we're exploring episode 6, Adjusting Your Defenses. In this episode, we'll unpack what triggers are and how they connect to our past wounds, especially for us creatives who might get defensive around money, success, or showing our authentic selves. We'll explore how our bodies physically respond to triggers through cortisol release and learn 5 powerful strategies, including one that I originated myself called the Whole You Pyramid. Whether you're struggling with defensiveness in your creative work, parenting, faith journey, friendships, or relationships, today's conversation offers practical tools to transform those protective barriers into bridges for authentic expression. This journey isn't about tearing down your defenses, it's about adjusting them to serve who you are becoming. Welcome to Adjusting. Welcome to Adjusting, a safe space for candid conversations about mental health and well-being with your host, Justin G. Nelson. Whether you're recovering from trauma, redefining your purpose, managing mental health, or simply craving more authenticity, this show is for you. I hope something resonates with you and helps you on your own personal journey. So sit back, relax, and let's start adjusting. And we're back to another episode of Adjusting Podcast with your host, Justin G. Nelson. This episode is fresh. It is fresh off the press, only because it really resonates to a conversation I had with my therapist. And thanks to the good old algorithm on TikTok, I was able to process my emotions in a healthy way. And I want to share that with you all in this episode. Also, thank God for paper and scripts, because this episode probably would go to the left, like far left, if I didn't make notes about everything. But yeah, so before we get any further, again, I want to shout out TJ with TJ podcast for editing, and we're still working on sponsors. I feel by the end of this episode, I'm going to have a really nice package to pitch to people to say, hey, you want to sponsor me now? Because this episode here is the one, you know? That's how I feel about it. So with that in mind, one more thing. I just want everyone, if you're listening to this, pause it right now and rate the episode. Give it 5 stars. Okay, subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Share it with someone. It's going to be good. So go ahead and share it. I'll remind you at the end of the episode as well. And just really support people who are doing podcasts. Now, I will say, prior to making my own podcast, I was anti-podcast because of my attention span. Now that I'm getting back into reading and I can listen to things at 1.5 to 2.0 speed, I can listen to everything, okay? I can listen to a podcast at 1.5 and be very happy, especially if people talk really slow. I'm trying to slow down some more in my podcast episodes, but anyway, that's not important. What is important is that you support creatives and people who are doing this, because it takes a lot of time, energy, effort, and we tired. Perfect. Okay, now that is out the way, I invite you to take a collective breath so that we can center ourselves and ground ourselves for this episode. So if you're driving, focus. You can just woo-saw while you're driving. But if you are home or in the office or somewhere where you can take a second to just appreciate the space we're in right now and appreciate your body and give thanks to the ancestors or whomever you deem worthy, I invite you to plant your feet, relax your kneecaps, relax your hips, your stomach, feel your chest, relax your shoulders, your chin, your cheeks, your forehead, and breathe in 1, 2, 3, and out 1, 2, 3. One more time, breathe in 1, 2, 3, and out. 1, 2, 3. Great. So let's start. Okay, so in previous episodes from season 1 and even in this season, we've explored adjusting to anxiety, adjusting to burnout, adjusting your energy, and even adjusting your light. But today's topic came from my therapy session earlier this week that hit a nerve. And this is not about adjusting your nerves, baby. I got so defensive in therapy. And it's like one of the few moments in therapy I was just like, oh, we can end this session now because I am not about to be berated or belittled. And that was not their intention at all. They were literally expressing things in that moment. And I'm just like, Justin, they are a human. My therapist pronouns are them, they. And I really got defensive. Um, And so I recently watched a video on TikTok that talked about shifting your frequencies. And I was just like, man, I truly, as much as we don't like the platforms or the way the algorithm or the way the social media platforms listen to our conversation. In this moment, I was grateful. I was truly grateful that TikTok found a video that I needed because I was going to hold on to that until the next time we met. But the video talked about shifting your frequency, and today's episode, we're talking about adjusting your defenses. Adjusting your defenses and how we can shift from being triggered from trauma to processing it as the whole you, your past self, your current self, and your future self. Like we'll talk about this later in the episode, but I want to talk about how all three of those make the whole you. So I'm calling this the whole you pyramid. We go trademark that. Okay. I'm working on that trademark because that theory, that pyramid, that it's just so beautiful. And it really resonates with me. And I hope at least 5 people say, yes, I get it. Okay. So we'll start with part 1, addressing your triggers. Last episode, episode 5, we talked about adjusting your energy. I think that was what, yeah. Yeah, I can be forgetting my episode titles. Last week was adjusting whatever the episode title was. We talked about buzzwords in social media. And I talked about like narcissism and safe space, and triggers was another word on the list. So let's talk about triggers. Those moments when something happens and suddenly we're not ourselves anymore. We're back in this painful memory space. We go back into fight, fawn, freeze, and flight. Again, I need to get that on a t-shirt because we always operate in those spaces without naming it. A trigger is basically anything, a word, a tone of voice, a situation, sometimes a odor can, like a fragrance or some type of scent, can trigger something that sets off an emotional response connected to past hurt or trauma. So for creatives, triggers can show up when someone questions your rates or your knowledge of a field or a topic, or as a parent, if your child questions something you do, it's not always from a place of disrespect. It's from a place of inquiry. They truly want to know why. Or, well, you did it, why can't I? If you are modeling what I'm supposed to be doing and how I should function as an adult, why can you do it and I can't? And don't say because I'm an adult. Okay, yeah, but like you know what they say, your children are a mirror of you. Okay. And then for Christians, it might be a heavy conversation. A lot of times the conversation of like homosexuality in the Bible triggers a lot of people because they talk about Leviticus and how, well, you know, shellfish is this and homosexuality is this. But then we're talking about how men in the Bible had multiple, I don't want to say wives, but they had multiple sexual partners, and that was fine. So there comes the narrative of this lens in the Bible where King James was homophobic, and he centered a lot of topics around certain things that he just wasn't interested in. But then that grows into a bigger topic of, well, Christianity is the youngest religion, so yada yada yada. Clearly, I've been in church my whole life. We can talk about that even more. The interesting thing is that these defenses were actually gifts at one point. That wall you built up, remember I talked about the wall that I have built up for so long, and I can truly say I have been chipping away at that wall. I've been very intentional with interactions, places, and all those things to really get me back to this new me. It's kind of like I was in a cocoon. Is that a cocoon? Yeah, a cocoon. When the butterfly goes through the metamorphosis stages, and you coming out of that thing, that's what I feel like. I'm coming out. And the wall you built, it protected you when you needed protection. Okay. And I kind of equate this to when people are forcing people to come out the closet with their sexuality. And I always say the closet was there to protect them. It was never meant for the person on the outside. It was more so their safe space for them to process who they were, who they are, and what they were feeling in that moment. And while this is not Pride Month or anything, don't rush people to come out of the closet. Okay, they're there for a reason. Yeah, we're going to keep that in there. Whether you're 22 or 62, we are all developed these shields for good reasons. There are a lot of adults, okay, well in their 50s and 60s, who are still defensive and easily triggered by comments and things. And their triggers are based off lack of respect. And when I look at it, I say, well, respect is a two-way street. Sometimes you have to give it to get it. And just because you are of a certain age doesn't mean you are warranted that respect. There still needs to be some type of communication because some of your respect is rooted in tradition and trauma and other things. This was not on the paper. I remember last month when a client was changing the scope of work. I love that word. Okay. When I launched my Type J marketing content, you will hear scope a lot. But so basically, when a client changes the scope of work, you start with, hey, for this month, I will be working on A, B, and C. That's what you're paying for, A, B, and C. When they change the scope of work, they say, well, can you do D, E, and F? Where they come from? That went in the contract. Okay. So now you are trying to get me to do more work and not pay for it. But then when you, the client or the contractors, step up and say, well, we need to talk about pricing, they go, well, I don't feel like you are even doing what the defenses come up. Okay, now I'm going to be defensive and say, well, how dare you question me and want to say all of a sudden I'm not qualified to even get paid what you're paying me now. You're trying to do me a favor. Huh? You need me, boo. You need me. Let's remember that, okay? That wasn't about the present moment. That was an old story about not being worthy. So the imposter syndrome comes up and I will say I have questioned whether or not am I overcharging seriously, or is it just that they don't have the money to pay me. Like, I get sometimes as small business owners and creatives, we are on a tight budget, but I still got bills to pay and you still have a business to run. So help me help you. Okay. These triggers aren't just annoying interruptions. They're messengers from our past selves showing us where healing is still needed. One more time for the people in the back. Triggers aren't just annoying interruptions. They're messengers from our past selves showing us where healing is still needed. The question isn't how to avoid them, but how to adjust our relationships with them. If you want to send your tithes and offering, you can now. So let's move on. Adjusting your defenses. So now that we have recognized our triggers, let's talk about how to adjust those defensive responses that have become automatic. Okay. We have some automatic, like either I'm going to block somebody, even though I do recommend blocking people to protect your peace. Sometimes if you are mid conversation with someone via text message and you block them, that's not fair. Okay. You don't know how to have a conversation. Our bodies are incredible record keepers. We talked about this in the book, The Body Keeps the Score with Brianna Weist. Highly recommended. Again, I read the book in a day. Well, I listened to it, but it still counts as reading. They remember trauma and they store it in our nervous system, affecting how we react to similar situations. Okay. So oftentimes you store trauma in your shoulders. That's why I always try to begin an episode with breathing so that you can relax. You store trauma in your shoulders, in your stomach, in your hips. That's why with tantric yoga, there are a lot of stretching exercises, and there are things that men can do. I can't speak for women, but there are things that men can do to release any trauma in their body. Oftentimes, people who experience sexual trauma store those things in their hips or their shoulders or their back, and then they're able to release the trauma. And that's why I also mention smell, because sometimes if people were sexually assaulted, there's a certain like body odor, scent, or something that really triggers them. But when you're triggered, your body releases cortisol. We talked about dopamine, we talked about serotonin, but I failed to mention cortisol. And cortisol, that motherfucker gets on my god nerves, okay? Like, I promise you, part of my weight gain is because of cortisol. This is a stress hormone. It's that rush that puts you in fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Okay? I am now taking ashwagandha every morning to help reduce my cortisol. You can also take blueberries. You can eat salmon if you're a meat eater, leafy greens, almonds, dark chocolate, lentils, and some other things. That's on the Earthy and Cultured page. This is why I'm a well-rounded multi-hyphenate, because we can talk about branding, we can talk about food, we can talk about mental health. You get it all here with me. So, cortisol is designed to protect you, but when it's constantly activated by old triggers, it can wear down your creativity, your spirituality, and your physicality. Also, shout out to my friend Jeremy, because he is the one technically who pointed out cortisol. We were talking about my lack of weight loss, and he said, "Man," trying to get in my Jeremy voice, "Man, bro, you gotta stop stressing so much, man, because that stress and that cortisol, it just sits there and it makes you fat, man." That's the best. His voice is deeper than that, but that's as deep as I can go. When you are triggered, pay attention to what happens physically. Do your shoulders tense up? Do your face wrinkle? Do you feel it in your neck? Do your stomach start hurting? Do you start twitching your leg? Like, where does it show up? These physical responses are actually your first opportunity to adjust your defenses. They're like early warning signs. Remember episode 5, we talked about adjusting your energy. See, I wrote it down. This is where that work becomes practical. Shifting your frequency starts with noticing your body's signals. I used to immediately shut down or get defensive and say, you know what, I quit because I ain't got time for this. I actually do have time for that, and thank you for pointing it out to me. So in therapy, this is what happened. This is me being transparent. We were talking about the therapy session had just started, and they were late, and that's a big trigger of mine. People late, you can't be late and get away with it, but I'm late and you penalize me and want to charge a late fee. I don't like that. I never liked that. So they were late, but they got on and they said, "Hey, how's it going?" It's like, "Good. Before we get started, let's talk about payments." And I was just like, "Well, good morning. Like, what we?" And then they said, payments are due at the end of the session, not the end of the week. And I was just like, perfect. Finances, the topic of money is the biggest trigger for me. And it's not that I don't know how to manage money, it's the relationship I've had with money growing up to where I am now. That I will not go into detail about, but I will say with the TikTok video, I was able to see everything from the bigger picture. They apologized. I addressed it and I said, this is not a conversation we've had as of late. I do understand that this is your job and that you have a life, I have a life. However, in the past, there was grace. There was grace given, and I was able to pay when the money came in. Moving forward, you will have your payments at the beginning of the session when you send the notification for me to pay it. Because it used to be it just automatically came out, but they had to switch payment platforms. And so, maturity, I was able to really sit with it. I was mad though. Like the baby, look, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see how I looked. This was me the whole time, and they knew. They were just like, but you're not in trouble. You're not. I'm not upset. I'm not mad. And I'm just like, I don't give a damn if you are upset or mad. How I feel in this moment, I feel attacked. And so we talked about it. We talked about my upbringing with money and where I am now with money and where I would like to be with money. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that with the whole U pyramid. So, with all that in mind, with my therapist, I learned to pause, to breathe, and work on reducing my cortisol levels even more. So, I was able to therapy was Tuesday. So, from Tuesday to today, I was able to really let it go and process it with the three sides of me and not harbor those emotions for 2 weeks. Because I can hold a grudge and people hold on to things longer than they should. And that is their whole self not being able to work in alignment so that they are able to move forward and give themselves grace and remove any shame or the fact that they feel like they're being attacked. So this adjustment isn't about eliminating your defenses completely. They're part of your story and your strength. It's about making them conscious choices rather than automatic reactions. So think of this as adjusting the dial on your nervous system responses rather than trying to dismantle the whole system. So we're gonna, if there was a gauge, okay, you have an empty, full, or you have, how will we gauge this? Let's see. Your nervous system, rest, hyper. We're trying to turn it back to resting state, okay? So turn it back to the left if you're right-handed or whatever. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see what I'm doing. The goal is to create space between the trigger and your response. That's where your freedom lives. Okay, the goal is to place rest between your trigger and your no. The goal is to create space between your trigger and your response. That's where your freedom lives. Say that again. That's where your freedom lives. When that defensive wall starts rising up, ask yourself, is this protecting who I am today? Or is it guarding wounds from my past that still need healing? I swear I love y'all, and I'm really not trying to step on your toes. I just want you to, get some better toe protection. Yeah. So moving on to part 4, applying your healing strategies. Okay. So, the first strategy is developing conscious awareness, catching yourself in that moment between trigger and reaction. So before you cuss somebody out, breathe. Okay. Before you slap somebody, breathe. Before you walk away, breathe. Okay. We're going to acknowledge the trigger before we react. This isn't about judgment, but about compassionate observation. Notice when you're getting defensive without criticizing yourself for it. Give yourself grace in this process. Grace is huge. Great. Like I will say there was a season this year I ran out of grace. Okay. I ain't had grace with nobody. I was just like, listen, I am graced out. Healing isn't linear. And those defensive patterns took years to form. So they're going to take years to adjust. Extend that same grace to your parents and those who raised you. They were working from tools and awareness they had at the time, during that time in their life, during the time of the year, in the political climate. Okay, give them grace. Remember that they likely inherited their own defenses from generations before. And I would love to do a deep dive on intergenerational trauma and intergenerational triggers and how our parents' responses influenced the way we respond to things, and how some of those are good, some of those aren't good. Primarily with punishment and whippings and things. Like gentle parenting is cute, but some of them kids need they beat. Okay, not like to death, but like beat. A good whooping. A good whooping has never hurt anyone. Okay, they make them stronger. But yeah, intergenerational trauma can be fixed. It can be healed. It can be reversed to intergenerational healing or intergenerational peace or rest. Like there's a way to reframe the structure with it. Try what I like to call pause practice, where you take a minute just to pause. You don't like you control the conversation when the ball is in your court. So don't immediately respond. Like, don't respond for the sake of responding. Like, pause, listen to what they're saying, and then respond. My issue is my sarcasm kicks in. That's my defensive mechanism. So if if my head tilts, it's game over. Like the heel Justin has left the building. Okay, I have left the chat. Sarcastic Justin's going to come out. But name what's happening. I'm feeling defensive right now. Just naming it can reduce its power over you. There's spiritual and scientific power in naming things. In scripture, come on to my churchy people, Adam named the animals, giving him stewardship over them. When we name our emotions, we gain authority over them rather than being controlled by them. The word of God for the people of God, thanks be to God. Number two, your inner dialogue. The second strategy involves creating a compassionate dialogue with your inner child, the part of you that experienced those original wounds. When triggered, ask yourself, what does the younger me need in this moment? Listen, y'all, this is when talking to yourself is fine. And just say, hey, little Justin, what's going on? Like, what do you need? Do we need to walk away? Do we need to rest? Do we need to go for a walk? Do we need some water? Do we need to do some jumping jacks? Do we need some music? A dance party? Like, what do you need? Maybe they need reassurance that they're safe now, that they're worthy, and that their voice matters. Whew, I got emotional. But thinking about the number of times where you've been like yelled at or laughed at or made fun of about things that really brought you happiness, and then getting to a place where you're in a space with people who see you for you, but you do things and then once it happens you get defensive, just like ugh. Like for me it was with singing. I love singing, went to school for it. I sing, and that audition that I had that I told y'all about, it changed my life. It changed my life. It took me getting to this point at age 35 to have that aha moment. Just like, I really can sing. But being criticized so much with the technical aspect of singing, and not not being trendy with the runs and all those things, it did some damage. So I'm able to like really tell little Justin, like, hey, we got this. We're going to be a star. We're going to be a star. And then future Justin is like, yes, we're going to be successful. We are successful. We're doing the things. This conversation creates a bridge between your past self and your present self, allowing healing to flow across time. The third thing is rewriting your story. Okay, the rest is still unwritten. And yes, Natasha. The third strategy is about becoming the author of your own narrative instead of letting past events write your story. Identify the limiting beliefs behind your defenses. I'm not good enough, I don't deserve success, or I'll be rejected if I show my true self. This is for my creatives. When you get in that audition room, have fun. Like, what did they say in Shrek? Let your freak flag fly. Let your Why am I singing so much this episode? Sorry. Challenge these beliefs by asking, is this actually true? What evidence do I have against this belief? Then create a new narrative. Roll those shoulders back, okay, and say, I am worthy of recognition for my creative work. This is me. When I said in 2 episodes ago, like, I want compliments, this was me really rewriting my story. Like, I am dope. I am doing good things. I am making a change. I am building a legacy. Like that is how I'm rewriting my story. I deserve love and success. My authentic voice is my greatest gift. I hope y'all are feeling good because I am. And number 4, frequency shifting. Now, this was something mentioned in the TikTok video I talked about, and they kind of hinted at the rewriting your story part. But with actively shifting your frequency, you're changing your energetic state when triggered. So, again, this is why we do deep breathing at the beginning of the episode, because this affects your nervous system and can lower your cortisol levels within minutes. Okay. So, if you're not listening to this podcast, but you need to like have a woo-saw moment, do those breathing exercises. By breathing into each of your chakras, we talked about this last season when I talked about adjusting your frequency. Breathing in deep, you want to make sure you're breathing from the head to the root and letting that breath like circulate through everything. That breathing in fresh air, you're breathing out any of that trauma or those defenses and them triggers. And so creating this fresh sense of air, you're re-energizing your chakras. And then I have my crystal necklace on this episode, and this is a malachite. It's a green crystal, and green usually associates with the heart chakra. It also helps with inflammation and other ailments. I can put some information about it in the description, but I got this recently, and I cleansed it with some Palo Santo, and I have a selenite stick here that I keep on my desk when I record to help keep the energy in the room healthy and positive. So these are ways to really look into shifting your frequency with like tangible items like crystals. But other ways you can also just move your body. In Grey's Anatomy, Christina and Meredith had a dance party and they would just dance it out. So find something like make you a frequency shifting playlist when you know that you had a stressful day and your cortisol levels are high. Like, let's just dance. Should I make an adjusting dance list? Let me know. Let me know. Try visualizing yourself releasing the tension, like watching a knot untie itself or imagining light replacing heaviness. Another powerful technique is speaking affirmations loudly in the mirror, in the shower, in the kitchen. Just say like, I am worthy of recognition for my creative work. I deserve love and success. My authentic voice is my greatest gift. Your voice literally changes the frequency in the room and in your body. Yes. This part, the fifth one, is the whole you pyramid. This is like my baby. If I do a TED talk, it would be the whole you pyramid, okay? The final strategy is what I call the whole you pyramid, bringing together your past wisdom, your present awareness, and your future vision. I named it a pyramid because it represents strength and stability, with your past forming the foundation, your present as the middle section, and your future self as the peak guiding your growth. So you're going in levels. I also wanted it to be a pyramid because if you were to take a ball or you take something that was a trigger or traumatic and you threw it in the pyramid, it's going to hit all the walls in it, but it'll eventually settle at the bottom and then you can compartmentalize it where you need it to go. I just love it. I love the way my brain thinks sometimes. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I need this thing to shut off sometimes. The whole U pyramid acknowledges that true healing isn't about compartmentalizing different parts of yourself, but bringing them into harmony. Integration means honoring all parts of your journey, both the wounds and the wisdom they've given you. So if you did not watch Inside Out 2, okay, and not listen, that movie changed my life too. When they were trying to take away like all the bad thoughts and the bad memories and the bad things that happened and throw them like in that little the pit back there. Yeah. When they did that, was it anxiety? I forgot who it was. I need to rewatch it. But they were just like, those things make up you too. So you need those bad experiences to know either not to do them again or to find out what you didn't learn from those experiences. So you need to reach back. My God. You need to reach back sometimes and grab those experiences so you know how to move forward. Send me the tithes and the offering. That was a message, and I didn't even write that down. That was God, okay? That was the Lord working through me. Um, but think of the whole you pyramid as a sacred conversation between the three versions of yourself: your inner child who experienced the original hurt, your present self who's doing the healing work, and your future self who embodies the freedom you're seeking. Oh, that's a moment. Sorry. When I talked to my best friend Ebony about this as I was walking to work, and I was just so fired up about it. But like going back and reading my notes, this thing is legit. Okay, this isn't just a psychological exercise though. It's a spiritual work that allows divine healing to flow across all dimensions of your being. Do the work, y'all. Do the work. So try this practice and then just write down anything from the past that you are looking to do. Don't put them in a pyramid yet, but just put inner child, current me, future self, and just write down what happened, what you're doing now, and where you want to see yourself. Ooh, homework. Okay, great. So you can journal from this perspective, but just remember that integration doesn't mean erasing your past or bypassing your pain. It means weaving it all together into a beautiful, authentic tapestry that is uniquely yours. So as you practice the whole you pyramid, you'll notice that your defensive reactions begin to transform into thoughtful responses. So you're able to name it, figure out how to work with it, and then how to move forward. Wisdom. So, here are some common ways that defensiveness shows up in everyday life. So, let's talk about some common situations where defensiveness tends to show up that we sometimes don't realize we're being defensive. So, for my creatives, defensiveness often appears when receiving feedback on your work. We got to be open to criticism, okay? Let's Beyonce. She is currently on tour with Cowboy Carter, or I forgot the long name of it. But people, I just think it's the Virgo brain in her. Like she already had this planned out, but people were saying that she was taking criticism when it came to the layout of the stage and where certain risers were, where seats were, or even her set list. I think, and other Beehive members feel that she had already had this planned out. We were just being impatient. But you, as a creative, you might find yourself explaining or justifying choices before the person has even finished their thoughts. In financial conversation, defensiveness can look like downplaying your needs or overcompensating by being rigid about money. This is particularly common for entrepreneurs and freelancers. It's also having to justify where your expenses go, or the thought that you have to spend money to make money, and you have to justify why the spending is happening so much, aka my podcast. For parents, defensiveness might surface when your parenting approach is questioned by either your child or other family members. That quick reaction to justify, this my child, don't tell me how to raise my child, you being defensive. That comes from a place of insecurity about doing the right thing. Sometimes, and it kind of goes back to like the black saying of what happens in this house stays in this house. We ain't got time to unpack that, but that's something, okay? In faith communities, defensiveness can appear when your beliefs are challenged or when different interpretations arise. Remember that true conviction doesn't require defensive reactions. Okay, so if someone is asking you why you tithe, not to me, but to the church, and they see your pastor come out with a new car or a new house or a new suit, don't be defensive and say, well, the Bible says to give 10%. Yeah, but like, where your suit come from? Because I know you don't get paid that much. Anyway, in romantic relationships, defensiveness often shows up as counterattacks. Well, you did that. And well, I ain't say nothing, but remember that one time. Please have a conversation before you end up single. Because, like, I will say, people be holding on to stuff as ammunition to use later. That ain't healthy, and that's not fair. That's not. You should have brought it up. My thing is, you got 48 hours to talk about it. And or don't go to sleep upset with your partner. Okay, you end up single like me. At work, defensiveness might manifest as difficulty receiving constructive criticism or feeling the need to prove your value consistently. Um, I ain't gonna share that part, but I have grown a lot. Something happened this week regarding work. I was just like, okay, I can't be upset. You're doing your job. It is what it is. The key is recognizing these patterns as opportunities to apply the strategies we've discussed, especially the whole U pyramid. Y'all, I can't wait. All right, so as we wrap up today's episode on adjusting your defenses, remember that this is an ongoing practice, not a one time fix. Your defenses were created for a reason. They protected you when you needed protection. The goal isn't to tear them down completely, but to adjust them to serve you presently. The journey from defensiveness to openness is really about freedom. Freedom to respond rather than react, freedom to create authentically, and freedom to connect deeply with others. When you feel those old defensive patterns rising up, remember the whole U pyramid. Bringing together your past, present, and future selves in a conversation of healing. Maybe that'll be my book title, The Whole U Pyramid. Ooh. Okay. In the words of Brene Brown, y'all know her, vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Adjusting your defenses isn't about becoming defenseless. It's about becoming discerning about what truly needs protection and what needs to be expressed. This work connects beautifully with our previous episode on adjusting your energy, purpose, and light, all pieces of the same journey toward authentic living. And that's the overall theme of this podcast. As we continue adjusting, I encourage you to keep making notes and doing the breathing exercises. Start your crystal collection if you're into that, Go for a walk, hug a tree, drink some water, get some ashwagandha. if your doctor approves of it, so we can work on those cortisol levels. I love to hear if you want me to, work on the whole U pyramid and work on that book. And until next time, remember that healing isn't just possible, it's your birthright. So thank you for listening, and be sure to share this episode with someone, okay, y'all? Until next time, bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you take something away to help you make the adjustments you need. Before you go, please take a quick second to share this with someone you care about. And if you can, please leave a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you're listening to this on. For more information about adjusting or to inquire about being a guest, head over to adjustingpod.com. Until next time.